We're being joined by Ms. Ruti Blum, who's a former advisor at the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu. She's also an author and an award-winning columnist, and she's joining us live in this broadcast. Now, Ms. Blum, this is a pretty critical moment in this war that's now gone on for well over 9 months. But just at this moment, there's also been this Netanyahu's visit to the United States of America. How do you rate his visit to the United States, and what has Netanyahu accomplished there?
I think he accomplished something very important by addressing both houses of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, and the whole of America, American people and the Israeli people, by explaining what this war is about, that it's actually not just a local war. It is Iran's war against the West, and Iran has used proxies. Israel is on the front lines of this war, but it's a regional and global one. And that America, that all the forces of good against the forces of evil the forces of good have to band together. And I think he did get that message across in his speech.
Interesting. So it's interesting the manner in which you have framed this, that this is not just a war that Israel is engaged in, but rather Israel is at the forefront of a war that also involves the West. Now, during Netanyahu's visit to the United States, the Democrat nominee for the presidential race, Kamala Harris, snubbed Netanyahu. She was not present during his address in the Congress, and she's also put out a very strong statement where she said that she's deeply concerned about the humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip because of this war, and she'll not stay silent. How do you think that'll be perceived by Netanyahu?
Well, first of all, it's a shame that she snubbed his address, because maybe if she had listened, if she had been present, which she should have been as the president of the Senate, maybe she would have gotten a different perspective if she had listened to what he said. Because what she said after her short meeting with him was just appalling. In the first place, what it did was place the onus on everything that's happening in Gaza on Israel, when in fact it's on Hamas. Any humanitarian crisis in Gaza is Hamas's fault. All deaths in Gaza are on Hamas's hands. All the millions of, well, thousands and thousands of humanitarian aid trucks that go into Gaza that are stolen by Hamas, that is, again, on Hamas's... If I can
just interject there, respectfully, Israel can carry out precision strikes to try to take out Hamas. But what we have witnessed in this campaign of relentless bombings that we've witnessed is that over 39,000 Palestinians have been killed, a majority of whom are said to be young, innocent children and women. How does Israel justify that?
First of all, those figures are from the Hamas-run health ministry. We reject those figures. Number two, it is interesting that you say that most of them are innocent civilians. We also reject that. Third, the ratio of civilian to what you'd call combatant deaths in Gaza is one of the lowest in the world during battle. Now, let me just say one thing. You have to understand that Israel does take precaution. It is not true that we do indiscriminate bombing. We are extremely precise, and yes, it is terrible that civilians are killed.
Right.
But Hamas purposely uses civilians as human shields.
I want you to also weigh in on the Israeli hostages who are also getting killed in the Gaza Strip. Now, there are reports that Israeli army managed to retrieve the bodies of 5 Israeli hostages from Khan Yunis, but the Israeli Defense Forces have not put out any information about the circumstances leading to their death. It is being reported that they were held in a tunnel deep underneath a building in Khan Yunis. So what were the circumstances under which these 5 Israeli hostages died?
As far as I understand thus far, these 5 Israelis were dead. Their bodies were abducted on October 7th into Gaza. As far as I understand at the moment, okay, it could be that after the forensic testing, we'll know better. But that's what has been reported so far. Many dead bodies were abducted into Gaza. Right. But again, let's suppose that Israeli strikes, which they did, ended up killing some of the hostages inadvertently. Again, all deaths in Gaza are on Hamas's hands.
members of the hostages who are protesting at this moment against Netanyahu?
Well, first of all, you know, there are hostage families who are not protesting against Netanyahu. It's interesting that the press is constantly focused on those who are protesting against Netanyahu. Second of all, if I had a family member in Gaza, it's possible I would also be protesting. You have to understand, these people are devastated. It's been months and months. They don't know the condition of their loved ones. They do know that the women are being raped and abused, and even some of the men are as well.
You know,
so
that
of
is why,
course they have to.
Ms.
Yes,
if I can interject, yes, that is why it is important that a peace deal is struck. That is why it is important that some kind of an agreement be put in place. But the question that I want to ask you is, as you've been an advisor of Benjamin Netanyahu, is he even in a position to strike any kind of a deal with Hamas for a truce and to get the release of hostages? Because quite evidently, the allies of Benjamin Netanyahu, the likes of Itamar Ben-Gvir, have said that any deal struck with Hamas would mean that Netanyahu would no longer remain the prime minister. So can Netanyahu even strike a peace deal?
First of all, yes, he can. Second of all, that's not exactly what his coalition partners, the ones you mentioned, have said. It's not that they said no deal. They said a bad deal. And that is also what Netanyahu says. And that is what most of the Israeli public feels as well. Because you see, if you strike a deal that leaves Hamas in power and doesn't return all the hostages, by the way, because Hamas has not agreed to return all the hostages. Hamas is trying to stay in power. It's trying to get the IDF out of Gaza. There are conditions here that are impossible to agree to, because all it will have done is have all the soldiers who were killed in Gaza die in vain, and it will put all the rest of Israelis at risk again, because Hamas has vowed to commit October 7th again and again and again.
All right, we're completely out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Bloom, for joining us and getting your perspective on what is happening here.
And thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.